Among history's most remarkable figures, two women stand whose strength and legacy still echo across centuries: Elisabeth of Valois and Anna Pavlovna of Russia. Each navigated the trials of monarchy with grace, intelligence, and quiet resilience, leaving their mark on courts that were not their own. Let us begin with the first, Elisabeth of Valois. Elisabeth of Valois was born on the 2nd of April, in the 1546 at the palace of Fontainebleau in France. What future awaited this shy and elegant daughter of France? Raised in one of Europe's most powerful dynasties, how would she endure the weight of marriage alliances, royal expectations, and personal loss? Could a life shaped by diplomacy and sorrow ever find joy or leave a lasting legacy? Please watch my full video until the end, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Please make sure to share it with your friends. Thank you. Now, let us dive into the full story. Born into the influential Valois-Angoulême line, Elisabeth was the eldest daughter of King Henry II of France and Catherine de' Medici. Her early life was shaped by both privilege and pressure. Under the care of Jean and Francois de Humieres, she was groomed for grace and discipline, a French princess destined for foreign courts. Known affectionately as Usable in her youth, she was close to Mary, Queen of Scots, who shared her childhood quarters. While Mary held seniority as a crowned queen, the bond between the girls would last a lifetime. Elizabeth's beauty was noted, though her sister Margaret and Mary were often said to outshine her. Her relationship with her formidable mother was marked by more than warmth, yet letters reveal Catherine's rare displays of tenderness. In this early world of courtly splendor, looming politics, and maternal shadows, Elisabeth of Valois began the quiet journey that would carry her far from France, into the arms of a king and the heart of an empire. Elisabeth of Valois and Mary, Queen of Scots, formed a rare and enduring friendship within the French royal nursery, one that transcended court politics and personal rivalry. From an early age, Elizabeth was expected to give precedence to Mary, who had already been crowned Queen of Scotland. Yet rather than stir resentment, this hierarchy seemed to foster a deep connection between the two young girls. They shared lessons, meals, and chambers, growing up under the careful supervision of their royal guardians. Despite differences in temperament, Elizabeth shy and reverent, Mary spirited and confident, their companionship thrived. Elizabeth, often overshadowed in beauty and rank, admired Mary's charm and presence. Mary, in turn, was touched by Elizabeth's quiet loyalty and gentle spirit. At court festivals and family gatherings, the two were often seen side by side, their bond symbolizing a rare harmony in a world driven by dynastic ambition. Even as Elizabeth's life veered toward Spain and Mary's return to the stormy politics of Scotland, they never fully lost contact. Their correspondence, though limited by time and distance, reflected the warmth and trust of their early years. In a life marked by separation, foreign customs, and rigid duties, Elizabeth's friendship with Mary remained one of her few lasting sources of comfort, a link to the girlhood she left behind in France, and to the rare intimacy that royalty seldom knew. From the moment of her birth, Elisabeth of Valois became a key pawn in Europe's grand game of diplomacy. As the daughter of King Henry II of France and Catherine de' Medici, her hand in marriage was a powerful tool, one that could shift alliances and alter the balance of power. By the time she was barely 4 years old, discussions were already underway to betroth her to Edward VI of England. This proposed union, however, sparked immediate controversy. Pope Julius III openly condemned the idea, threatening excommunication should the Protestant king wed a Catholic princess. Still, in July of 1551, a dowry of 200,000 ekis was promised, reflecting how seriously France pursued the match. But when Edward died suddenly in 1553, the entire negotiation crumbled. Elizabeth's fate was once again open to shifting political winds. Other offers followed in rapid succession. She was considered for alliances with Savoy, Austria, and beyond, each potential match weighing royal favor, religious alignment, and territorial advantage. Through it all, Elizabeth had no voice in her future. At court, she continued her studies, her painting, and her courtly duties, never knowing when or where she might be called to marry for the sake of her country. These years of uncertainty prepared her for the eventual call that would define her destiny, a marriage not to a prince, but to a widowed king nearly twice her age, a man who ruled one of Europe's mightiest empires. In the summer of 1559, Elisabeth of Valois was married to Philip II of Spain, a union born of political necessity rather than romance. The match was arranged under the Peace of Cateau-Cambrésis, which ended years of war between France and Spain. To seal the treaty, Elizabeth was offered as a royal bride to the Spanish king, becoming his third wife at the tender age of 13. The wedding by proxy was held at Notre Dame Cathedral, with the Duke of Alba standing in for Philip. But this joyous moment quickly turned to tragedy. Just days after the ceremony, King Henry II of France, Elizabeth's father, hosted a grand tournament to celebrate the peace and his daughter's marriage. During a jousting match near Place des Vosges, he was struck in the eye by a splintered lance. The wound festered, and despite the efforts of royal surgeons, he died of sepsis on the 10th of July. Elizabeth's joy collapsed into grief. Her father's death delayed her departure to Spain and forced a sudden shift in the French court. Her brother, just 15 years old, was crowned King of France that same day. The young princess now faced her journey to a foreign land not in celebration, but in mourning. Draped in sorrow, she left France with a heavy heart, her wedding marked not by festivity, but by the haunting memory of a father lost to fate, and a life ahead shaped by both politics and pain. Elisabeth of Valois began her journey to Spain not as a radiant bride, but as a grieving daughter. Her departure was delayed for months by her father's untimely death, her brother's coronation, and her own illness. The court, along with her sister-in-law Mary, Queen of Scots, assembled in November to bid her farewell. Her mother, Catherine de Medici, was unable to attend, remaining beside her deceased husband until the very end. Elizabeth's journey was a royal procession of unmatched scale. Her convoy included a retinue of 160 attendants and was burdened with trunks, baskets, and crates filled with rich French goods, carpets, silver, paintings, linens, and jewelry. Her elaborate gowns were too delicate for overland travel and had to be sent by ship. Through cold weather and treacherous mountain paths in the Pyrenees, the entourage pressed forward at a slow pace, hindered by both terrain and tradition. At last, in February of 1560, Elizabeth crossed into Spanish territory. The transformation had already begun. Her 16 French ladies were ordered to adopt Spanish dress, signaling her new identity as Queen of Spain. Elizabeth herself wore mourning attire, looking more like a widow than a bride. At the royal wedding in Guadalajara, she met figures who would remain central in her life, including court painter Sofonisba Anguissola and Ana de Mendoza. In this new land, far from her childhood comforts, Elizabeth stepped into her role, not only as a queen consort, but as a symbol of peace, sacrifice, and unspoken strength between two great empires. The formal wedding of Elisabeth of Valois and Philip II of Spain took place in Guadalajara shortly after her arrival. Though only 13 years old, Elizabeth was now queen consort of one of the most powerful realms in Europe. Spanish court customs quickly enveloped her, demanding immediate adaptation. Gone were the lively freedoms of France. In their place stood rigid decorum, solemn rituals, and the imposing formality of Spanish protocol. Despite her youth and recent grief, Elisabeth made a strong first impression. Her gentle demeanor, refined manners, and willingness to learn endeared her to many. She met the celebrated Italian painter Sophonisba Anguissola, who was appointed as both lady-in-waiting and court artist. Sophonisba not only painted Elisabeth, but also tutored her in painting, helping the young queen refine her artistic talents. Elisabeth also grew close to Ana de Mendoza, a noblewoman who would become one of her lifelong companions. Philip II, nearly twice her age, was reportedly captivated by his new bride. Though Elisabeth had originally been betrothed to his son Carlos, politics had intervened, and now she was queen, not princess. Still, she handled the transition with surprising grace, showing glimpses of warmth and charm beneath her shy exterior. Her presence at court brought a quiet elegance, but it also highlighted the vast cultural distance she now faced. In this new life, Elisabeth would have to learn not only how to be a queen, but how to endure. Life at the Spanish court was a world away from the vibrant, expressive environment of Elisabeth's French upbringing. In Madrid, formality ruled every moment, from the way she spoke to how she dressed, walked, and even dined. Court protocol demanded near total obedience to tradition, and Elisabeth, still only a teenager, struggled with the weight of constant surveillance and endless ritual. Yet she found comfort in creativity. Under the guidance of Sophonisba Anguissola, Elisabeth's painting flourished. Her private chambers often became quiet spaces of artistic expression, filled with brushes, colors, and canvases that let her explore emotions court life would not allow. She was also surrounded by a carefully curated household, while many of her French attendants were replaced by Spanish nobility. A few loyal companions, like Claude de Vineux and Jean de Chassincourt, remained by her side. But her gentle defiance of rigid norms did not go unnoticed. Elisabeth permitted dancing in her private quarters, much to the dismay of her sister-in-law, Joanna of Austria, who criticized her behavior to foreign ambassadors. She also baffled the court by her casual eating habits, often accused of disorder at meals for her fondness for meat and informal table manners. The queen's movements were strictly controlled. Each night, her chambers were locked by the majordomo, with the key delivered to her chief lady-in-waiting. This lack of freedom, this transformation into a symbol more than a person, would quietly shape Elisabeth's inner world, one defined by beauty, restraint, and quiet resistance behind palace walls. Within the Spanish royal family, Elisabeth of Valois carved out a tender, if complex, space of affection. Though she had entered the marriage as part of a diplomatic arrangement, she and Philip II developed a surprisingly warm bond. Despite their age difference, Elisabeth wrote to her mother about her admiration for Philip, calling him a charming and devoted husband. In return, Philip was deeply taken with his young queen, gradually abandoning his infidelities and spending more time at her side. Elisabeth also shared a close relationship with her stepson, Carlos, Prince of Asturias. Originally intended as her husband before politics altered the match, Carlos remained fond of Elisabeth. His mental health, however, was unstable, and his behavior grew increasingly erratic. Yet he always treated Elisabeth with gentleness and warmth. When Philip ultimately imprisoned his troubled son, Elisabeth was heartbroken. She wept for days, powerless to change the tragic course of the prince's life. Motherhood brought both joy and sorrow. Elisabeth's first pregnancy in 1560 ended in stillbirth. A second miscarriage in 1564 further deepened her grief. But in 1566, she gave birth to Isabella Clara Eugenia, followed by Catalina Michaela in 1567. the royal couple doted on their daughters, delighting in their laughter, dolls, and music. Elizabeth, who had once been a lonely young bride, now found a quiet comfort in family, a rare sweetness amid the strict grandeur of Spanish court life. Her daughters were more than heirs. They were light in a world that often felt cold and confining. As Queen of Spain, Elisabeth of Valois was expected to embody grace, devotion, and composure, both in public ceremonies and in the silent rituals of court life. She attended religious festivals, received foreign dignitaries, and appeared at carefully choreographed royal events. Yet behind the poised exterior lay a young woman carrying burdens few could see. Her grief for her father, her lost children, and her imprisoned stepson quietly lingered, woven into her daily routine. Elizabeth's health was fragile. She was known to retreat to bed at the first sign of illness, prompting criticism from Spanish courtiers who viewed her as overly delicate. She seemed to carry a lingering homesickness for France, visible in her fondness for French songs, letters, and memories. The Spanish court, rigid and cold, offered little emotional refuge. Even her personal moments were guarded. Each evening, she was locked inside her chambers by royal command, a symbol of both her vulnerability and the strict rules that defined her life. Her correspondence with her mother and with Mary, Queen of Scots, became lifelines to a world beyond palace walls. These letters reveal glimpses of a thoughtful, introspective queen, one who navigated sorrow through kindness, art, and duty. She was praised for her piety and admired for her beauty, but rarely understood for her quiet endurance. In the glittering world of empire and ceremony, Elizabeth remained a figure of subtle resistance, fulfilling her role while privately grieving the freedom she had lost and the dreams she dared not voice aloud. In the foreign splendor of the Spanish court, motherhood offered Elisabeth of Valois her most personal joys and deepest sorrows. Her first pregnancy in 1560 ended in tragedy with a stillborn son. The heartbreak struck quietly but deeply. In a court where heirs were everything, the pressure to conceive again mounted swiftly. A miscarriage in 1564, this time of twin girls, only deepened her private despair. Still, Elizabeth persevered. In August of 1566, she gave birth to a healthy daughter, Infanta Isabella Clara Eugenia. Both parents rejoiced as though she had been a male heir. Less than 2 years later, in October of 1567, Elizabeth gave birth again, this time to Catalina Michaela. Philip and Elizabeth adored their daughters. The king, so often distant and occupied, now delighted in their play and laughter, ordering dolls, jams, and tiny gifts to fill their nursery. Elizabeth's devotion to her daughters was maternal and emotional, not simply ceremonial. She believed their births were blessings, once telling her mother that Isabella's survival was due to the miracle of Saint Eugene of Toledo, whose relics she had brought with her from France. In a land of strict protocol, where queens were often symbols more than women, Elizabeth poured her love into these two lives. They were her comfort, her legacy, and her light, fragile proof that even in exile, she had created something joyful, something hers. But fate, once again, would not let her happiness last for long. Though bound by royal duty and confined by Spanish protocol, Elisabeth of Valois nurtured a quiet world of friendship and longing, one built on letters, shared moments, and silent dreams. Her bond with Sofonisba Anguissola, the Italian court painter, grew stronger over time. More than a tutor in art, Sofonisba became a trusted confidante. Through their long hours of painting together, Elizabeth found both expression and companionship, a safe place to be more than just a queen. Another constant presence was Ana de Mendoza, whose wit and loyalty made court life more bearable. In these relationships, Elizabeth preserved a sliver of emotional freedom, moments when she could laugh, speak freely, or reminisce about her home in France. Yet her most poignant connection may have been with Mary, Queen of Scots. The two continued to correspond across kingdoms, their letters filled with memories, concerns, and reflections on motherhood, exile, and hope. In one such letter, Mary suggested that her infant son, James, be smuggled to Spain, raised at court, and later married to one of Elizabeth's daughters. It was a daring dream, one born of desperation and diplomacy. Elizabeth considered the idea, moved by the notion of reuniting their families through a new generation. But the plan would never come to pass. Even as she performed her duties with quiet grace, Elizabeth remained a woman of longing for home, for friendship, and for a future she could shape. In this hidden world of letters and dreams, her spirit endured, soft but unbroken. Elisabeth of Valois had faced tragedy before, but nothing prepared her for the final sorrow that would claim her life. In late 1568, pregnant once again, she entered her confinement with quiet hope. She had already given Spain 2 daughters and was widely admired as a devoted queen. Though her health had always been delicate, there was no sign of impending danger until the early hours of October the 3rd. That morning, Elizabeth suffered a sudden and agonizing collapse. The baby was stillborn, and despite desperate efforts, she too could not be saved. Elisabeth of Valois passed away on the 3rd of October in the year 1568, at the age of 23. Complications arose swiftly. Elizabeth went into labor and delivered a stillborn daughter. But the physical toll was too great. Within hours of the birth, she too passed away, only 22 years old. She died at the royal palace of Aranjuez, surrounded by attendants who could do nothing to save her. The court was stunned. Philip, usually stoic and composed, was shattered by the loss. He had remained close to Elizabeth in her final days and now faced not only the death of his queen, but of his child as well. Elizabeth's body was laid to rest at El Escorial, the great Spanish royal monastery. Messages of mourning came from France and beyond. Her daughters, still too young to understand the full weight of the moment, were left motherless in a court steeped in formality. In the silence that followed, a sense of finality fell over the palace. Elizabeth's life, shaped by duty, softened by grace, and ended in sacrifice, closed as it had begun, quietly, without fanfare, but leaving behind a memory that would not be forgotten. The death of Elisabeth of Valois left a deep and visible wound in the Spanish court, and in the heart of Philip II. Known for his reserve and political composure, Philip was unusually shaken by her passing. In private, he grieved not only the loss of his young queen, but the comfort, companionship, and warmth she had brought into his life. Their marriage, though arranged, had blossomed into genuine affection, a rare bond in a world of political unions. Elizabeth's absence echoed throughout the royal household. Her daughters, still very young, were left to be raised by court officials and tutors. Though Philip remained a devoted father, his presence became more distant, shadowed by the loss of a woman who had softened the rigidity of his rule. Her memory lingered in the paintings she had posed for, the gifts she had cherished, and the chapel where her name was spoken in whispered prayers. In the months that followed, Elizabeth's mother, Catherine de Medici, offered Philip another match, her younger daughter, Margaret of Valois, but Philip refused. Whether out of respect, sorrow, or political caution, he declined to marry again so soon. To those who knew him best, this decision spoke volumes. Elizabeth had not been merely a queen to him. She had been a rare companion, a light amid the solemn corridors of power. Her death marked the end of an era, one remembered not for war or conquest, but for the quiet intimacy of a king and the young queen he truly mourned. Long after her death, Elisabeth of Valois lived on, not just in royal records, but in plays, operas, novels, and imagination. Her quiet grace, early death, and connection to one of Europe's most powerful courts made her an ideal figure for romantic retellings. Writers and artists transformed her life into a story of beauty and sorrow, often blurring the line between fact and legend. Friedrich Schiller's play Don Carlos brought Elisabeth's memory to new audiences, portraying her as tragically caught between love and duty, romantically linked to her stepson, Carlos, whom she had once been betrothed to. This version of her life inspired Giuseppe Verdi's famous opera Don Carlos, in which Elisabeth becomes a symbol of impossible love and silent sacrifice. Other adaptations followed, including Antonio Buzzola's Elisabeth of Valois and several European stage versions that emphasized her tenderness and tragedy. In literature, Madame de Lafayette's novella The Princess de Cleves uses Elizabeth's wedding festivities as a historical backdrop for its drama, while British novelist Jean Plaidy crafted a fictional version of Elisabeth torn between affection for Philip and sympathy for Carlos. In modern times, she has appeared in television shows such as Reign and The Serpent Queen, where she is often portrayed as poised and fragile, a young woman navigating courtly intrigue. Though the true Elisabeth left behind only letters and portraits, these fictional versions have ensured her legacy lives on, remembered not just as a queen, but as a figure of quiet depth, enduring loyalty, and a story that still captures the imagination. Elisabeth of Valois lived only 22 years, yet her legacy continues to ripple through the history of European royalty. As Queen Consort of Spain, her role was shaped by diplomacy, duty, and personal sacrifice, a life dictated by treaties, losses, and expectations. Yet within those narrow confines, she left a mark defined not by power, but by character. She brought a sense of warmth and refinement to the rigid Spanish court. Her kindness, gentle demeanor, and devotion to her children softened the stern formality around her. Even those who once criticized her came to respect her dignity and strength. Through her close relationships, artistic pursuits, and emotional sensitivity, Elisabeth carved out her own space in a world that seldom made room for individuality. Her two daughters, Isabella Clara Eugenia and Catalina Michaela, would carry forward her bloodline, both becoming influential figures in their own right. Isabella, in particular, inherited her mother's intelligence and composure, later ruling the Spanish Netherlands alongside her husband with notable grace. Elizabeth's death was mourned not just in Spain, but in France and across the courts of Europe. She was remembered as the queen who bridged two rival nations with humility and hope, and whose quiet strength endured far beyond her brief reign. In portraits, in poetry, and in fiction, Elisabeth of Valois became more than a political bride. She became a symbol of loyalty, elegance, and the human cost of royalty. Her story remains one of the most poignant in the tapestry of European queenship. Let us now turn to another remarkable figure of royal descent. Grand Duchess Anna Pavlovna of Russia was born on the 18th of January in the year 1795 at Gatchina Palace near St. Petersburg in the Russian Empire. How did this daughter of emperors carry the weight of dynasties across borders and generations? What did she lose, and what did she preserve as she moved from the splendor of the Russian court to the stark discipline of the Dutch throne? And how did her identity as a Romanov shape the nation she never fully called home? Anna Pavlovna was born into the powerful Romanov dynasty, the eighth child and sixth daughter of Emperor Paul I of Russia and Empress Maria Feodorovna. Her early years were steeped in imperial ceremony, nurtured within the sprawling Gatchina Palace, surrounded by siblings, tutors, and tradition. Yet beneath the lavish architecture, her family lived under tension. Her grandmother, Catherine the Great, had dominated court politics until her death in 1796, and shortly afterward, Paul assumed the throne, only to meet a violent end 5 years later. Anna's earliest memories were formed in the shadow of this turbulence. When Paul was assassinated in 1801, she was just 6 years old. Her mother, now a widow, raised Anna and her younger brothers, Nicholas and Michael, at Tsarskoye Selo. Anna was particularly close to them and to her mother, whose strength and discipline left a lasting imprint. Taught by a Swiss governess, Anna mastered multiple languages, learned music, painting, and the etiquette of queens. Even as a child, she moved with the confidence of someone born into absolute power, a princess not only of Russia, but of destiny. Anna Pavlovna's world changed forever on the night of her father's assassination. In March of 1801, Emperor Paul I was killed in his bedroom during a coup at St. Michael's Castle. Though Anna was only 6 years old, the event marked a defining rupture in her childhood. Her father, an unstable and often unpredictable ruler, had inspired fear in his court, but to his young daughter, he was still a father, and his sudden death left a void. With Paul's murder, her older brother Alexander ascended the throne as Emperor of Russia. The family relocated from Gatchina to Tsarskoye Selo, where Anna's upbringing continued under the watchful eye of her mother, Empress Maria Feodorovna. It was a world of discipline, intellectual rigor, and ceremonial expectations, but also one shadowed by grief and political caution. From an early age, Anna learned that safety and status could vanish overnight, even within a palace. Despite the trauma, her education continued uninterrupted. She was trained in languages, particularly Russian, French, and German, and received instruction in mathematics, history, and the arts. Her governess, Louise de Sybourg, affectionately known as Bercis, provided structure and stability. Anna thrived under her guidance, becoming adept at painting and embroidery, and showing strong intelligence and independence. But the emotional cost of that early loss stayed with her. As she grew, Anna developed a fierce loyalty to her surviving family, especially to her mother and 2 younger brothers, Nicholas and Michael. Their bond would remain unshakable, even as fate carried Anna far from the empire of her birth. As Anna Pavlovna matured within the gilded walls of Tsarskoye Selo, she came to embody the elegance and grace of a Russian Grand Duchess. Her upbringing was defined by refinement and purpose. A carefully curated education designed to prepare her for life at the highest echelons of European royalty. Though she lived in the shadow of court politics and dynastic unrest, Anna thrived under her mother's vigilant guidance and the teachings of her Swiss governess. She was naturally gifted in languages, mastering Russian, French, and German with fluency. Her letters would later reflect not only linguistic finesse, but emotional depth and clarity. Anna was also trained in music, needlework, painting, and deportment, arts befitting a woman of noble rank. These skills were not merely ornamental, they were essential tools for diplomacy and presentation in royal life. Her embroidery and painting were said to be of excellent quality, revealing a mind that was both meticulous and creative. Despite the loss of her father and the pressures of court, Anna remained devoted to her family. She was particularly close to her mother and younger brothers Nicholas and Michael, writing to them faithfully after leaving Russia. With Nicholas, who would eventually become Tsar, she shared a bond of mutual trust and reliance. Even in adulthood, she would call upon his favor, and he in turn showered her with support. Anna's position in the imperial family granted her status, but it was her quiet strength and cultivated mind that earned respect. She grew into a figure of serene confidence, a woman destined not just for marriage, but for influence in a world that demanded both obedience and poise. In the early 19th century, Anna Pavlovna was one of Europe's most eligible princesses, a Romanov by birth, impeccably educated and deeply loyal to her family's legacy. Yet in the halls of imperial strategy, love was rarely the driving force behind a royal marriage. Anna's future was shaped not by personal desire, but by negotiations, diplomacy, and the delicate balancing of empires. At one point, Emperor Napoleon of France sought her hand in marriage, having already failed to win over her elder sister Catherine. Anna's mother, wary of such a union with a former enemy, skillfully delayed the courtship until Napoleon turned his attention elsewhere. Other candidates included Charles Ferdinand, Duke of Berry, and the British Duke of Clarence, each representing potential alliances with major European powers. But it was in the aftermath of the Congress of Vienna that Anna's marital destiny took clearer shape. Her brother, Tsar Alexander I, proposed that she wed Prince William of Orange, heir to the Dutch throne. The suggestion was not without concern. Anna questioned William's status, considering it beneath her own as an imperial Grand Duchess. Still, Peter the Great's decree forbade Romanovs from being forced into marriage, so William was invited to Russia to meet her in person. To everyone's relief, Anna found him acceptable. With her consent secured, the wedding was planned, a union meant to reinforce post-Napoleonic alliances and extend Russia's influence westward. The girl who had grown up beneath gilded ceilings and Russian icons would soon find herself on a very different path, one lined with unfamiliar customs, foreign languages, and a throne she never fully claimed as her own. On the 21st of February in the year 1816, Anna Pavlovna married Prince William of Orange in a grand ceremony at the Winter Palace in St. Petersburg. The union, orchestrated by her brother Tsar Alexander I, symbolized the new alliance between Russia and the Netherlands after the upheaval of the Napoleonic Wars. Anna, though reluctant at first, had agreed to the match after meeting William and finding him agreeable, though she never fully set aside her belief that his rank was beneath her own. The ceremony was lavish, celebrated with imperial splendor. Anna received a dowry of 1,000,000 rubles and retained her title of Grand Duchess. Her faithful governess, Bersis, accompanied her to her new home. Russian poet Alexander Pushkin even commemorated the marriage with a dedicated poem, capturing the attention it drew across Europe. Yet beneath the celebration, Anna quietly understood what she was giving up, not just her homeland, but her place at the heart of the Romanov world. The newlyweds remained in Russia for a year before departing for the Netherlands. It was during that time Anna made a subtle but significant transition. Though still surrounded by Russian ceremony, she began preparing herself for life abroad, learning more about Dutch society, adjusting to court expectations, and reflecting on the role she would soon have to play. She knew that in the Netherlands, her identity would change. She would no longer be just a daughter of emperors. She would become a foreign queen consort. Yet Anna carried with her the culture, discipline, and pride of her Russian lineage. In every stitched hem and gilded relic packed for her journey, the Grand Duchess traveled westward not only in duty, but in defiance of becoming anything less than imperial. Anna Pavlovna's arrival in the Netherlands marked the beginning of a lifelong tension between identity and obligation. Though she had consented to the marriage, nothing could fully prepare her for the cultural distance she would face. The Dutch court was modest compared to the opulence of St. Petersburg, and the egalitarian values of Dutch society clashed sharply with Anna's deeply ingrained sense of hierarchy and imperial tradition. She and Prince William were granted 2 royal residences, the Nutterdijk Palace in The Hague and Soestdijk Palace, a quieter retreat surrounded by gardens and woods. Yet even in such surroundings, Anna struggled to feel at home, The Dutch language was foreign to her, as was the relaxed attitude toward royalty. In Russia, royalty was venerated from a distance. In the Netherlands, the line between noble and commoner felt thin and uncomfortable. Her public appearances were carefully managed, and she retained her Orthodox faith, maintaining a private chapel and Russian priest in her household. She spoke French with her husband, the language of diplomacy and court life across Europe, and began taking lessons in Dutch. Over time, she grew fluent, though her accent and tone still reflected her Russian upbringing. Privately, she found solace in letters to her family and in the familiar rituals of her youth. Though she never sought popularity in her new country, she remained dignified and dutiful. Even as she fulfilled her role with composure, Anna's heart remained rooted in the empire she had left behind. She was now a princess of the Netherlands, but always a Grand Duchess of Russia. Though Anna Pavlovna officially represented the Dutch crown, her heart and habits found greater comfort in Brussels, then still part of the United Kingdom of the Netherlands. From the early years of her marriage, she and Prince William preferred the sophistication and formality of the Belgian capital over the austerity of The Hague. To Anna, Brussels offered a closer reflection of her Russian upbringing with its French-speaking aristocracy, ceremonial court life, and elegant social circles. In contrast, the northern Dutch provinces felt too simple, too egalitarian for a woman raised among emperors and generals. The warmth of the Belgian nobility, who admired her bearing and culture, offered a kind of emotional refuge. Anna became a popular figure among the upper classes in Brussels, and her Russian pride, which had seemed out of place in the Netherlands, was respected in the more cosmopolitan South. She and William resided at the Hof van Brabant until it was destroyed by fire in 1820. They were then given another residence, where Anna hosted gatherings, promoted Russian customs, and maintained the aura of a royal court. It was during this period that she gave birth to several of her children, including her favorite, Prince Alexander. Family life flourished alongside public representation, and for a time she felt less displaced. But the peace was not to last. By 1830, the Belgian Revolution erupted, forcing Anna and her family to abandon Brussels and return north. The emotional and cultural refuge she had found was lost, and with it, another piece of the world where she had once felt herself truly seen. She returned to the Netherlands a queen in waiting, but further away than ever from the empire she still called home. Despite her public composure, Anna Pavlovna's life as a wife and mother was marked by deep emotional attachments and quiet heartbreak. Her strongest bond remained with her family in Russia, particularly her younger brothers Nicholas and Michael. Even after decades abroad, she continued writing them affectionate letters, filled with stories, requests, and reflections that revealed her longing for the homeland she had left behind. In the Netherlands, Anna had 5 children, and her favorite was Prince Alexander, the second-born son. She adored him openly, once declaring in a letter that he had no faults. But their relationship was not always easy. Alexander, free-spirited and independent, resisted his mother's strong-willed nature. He bristled at her attempts to control his movements, complaining that being taken on trips with her felt like being dragged off like a monkey in a cage. Still, beneath the friction lay a deep maternal devotion. His sudden death in 1848, at only 29 years old, devastated Anna. She mourned him for the rest of her life, preserving his possessions and keeping his memory alive in their Soestdijk home. No loss ever affected her more deeply. Her relationship with her eldest son, William, was far more strained. Like his mother, he was proud and temperamental, but they clashed over authority and values. Anna disapproved of his marriage, and their frequent disagreements created emotional distance. By contrast, she had gentler relations with her younger children, though they spent much of their lives abroad. These personal griefs, especially the death of Alexander, would harden Anna's character in later years. Her sorrow was quiet, her loyalty fierce, and her love, once lost, never forgotten. Behind the grandeur of royal titles, Anna Pavlovna's marriage to William of Orange, later King William II, was far from harmonious. From the beginning, Anna made it clear she considered herself superior in rank. As a Romanov Grand Duchess, descended from centuries of emperors, she viewed her husband's lineage with mild disdain. Though she fulfilled her duties as wife and consort, the union lacked warmth and trust. Their differences were not only cultural but personal. William's temperament was unpredictable and at times reckless. He accumulated debts, associated with questionable companions, and engaged in extramarital affairs, all of which embarrassed and infuriated Anna. When a portion of her jewelry mysteriously vanished in 1829, she reportedly suspected her husband himself, deepening the mistrust between them. Though she maintained a composed public image, Anna's frustration would sometimes erupt in private. She could be sharp-tongued and emotionally distant, withdrawing into her chambers for days. Her temper and his impulsiveness led to frequent arguments, some of which spilled over into court gossip. And yet, despite these tensions, Anna never openly defied William. When the Belgian Revolution created a rift between William and his father, King William I, Anna served briefly as a mediator, encouraging reconciliation and loyalty. It was one of the few instances in which she involved herself in political matters. Their marriage remained intact but emotionally fractured. Anna upheld her role as consort with unwavering dignity, but she remained guarded, unwilling to fully open her heart to a man she could not fully respect. For Anna, marriage was a duty, and one she performed with pride, even as it offered little in return. On the 7th of October in the year 1840, Anna Pavlovna became Queen of the Netherlands. Her father-in-law, King William I, had abdicated, and her husband, William II, was inaugurated at the Nieuwe Kerk in Amsterdam. Anna attended the ceremony adorned in silver cloth, a dress befitting her imperial heritage and her personal sense of grandeur. As queen, Anna approached her role not with the warmth of a public figure, but with the solemnity of duty. She never aspired to be beloved. Rather, she sought to be respected. She demanded strict etiquette at court, upheld ceremonial traditions, and maintained a clear separation between the royal family and the public. Though this formality was met with mixed reactions, it undeniably gave the Dutch court a new level of royal presence, one that mirrored the grandeur of Russia more than the simplicity of Dutch custom. Anna continued to speak French in her household, but by now she had mastered Dutch and used it with fluency in public engagements. She retained her Orthodox religion, complete with her own chapel, Russian choir boys, and a personal priest, quietly preserving her identity even as queen. To the outside world, Anna appeared tall, dignified, and often distant. But beneath the surface was a woman of intelligence, discipline, and deep conviction. She understood the weight of monarchy, and she wore it with pride. Even in a foreign land, she carried the poise of a Romanov, reminding all who saw her that though queens may marry into kingdoms, empresses are born. As Queen of the Netherlands, Anna Pavlovna took her position seriously, shaping the royal household with a firm hand and leaving a mark that extended beyond ceremony. While she never embraced the open accessibility favored by Dutch society, she remained deeply committed to charitable work, channeling her sense of duty into visible acts of service. She established numerous charitable institutions, including orphanages, schools, and relief programs for the poor. Her most enduring legacy was the founding of the Anna Pavilion, a hospital in Hilversum built in 1841 to treat the mentally ill. It reflected both her compassion and her belief in structured care. She also supported disaster relief efforts, knitting garments for victims of floods and contributing funds during national crises. Yet she performed these acts quietly, with little personal fanfare. At court, Anna insisted on the formality and protocol of her Russian upbringing. She oversaw dress codes, behaviors, and rituals, turning the Dutch court into a model of refined discipline. While some saw her as aloof, others respected her dignity and consistency. She was not one to adapt. Rather, she expected the world around her to meet her standards. Throughout her reign, she remained intensely loyal to her homeland. Her Orthodox chapel, Russian staff, and constant correspondence with her brothers Nicholas and Michael kept her spiritually and emotionally connected to St. Petersburg. Even in widowhood, she would continue to identify herself as a Romanov first and Queen second. For Anna, queenship was not about charm or popularity. It was about honor, service, and the unshakable pride of an imperial daughter raised for command. For Anna Pavlovna, motherhood was not simply a private role. It was a political duty tied to the survival of monarchy itself. As Queen of the Netherlands, she understood that producing heirs was central to preserving royal continuity, especially in a post-Napoleonic Europe where dynasties were being questioned and redefined. Between 1817 and 1822, Anna gave birth to 5 children, 4 sons and 1 daughter, all of whom would carry forward the legacy of 2 empires. Her eldest son, William, was groomed from birth to be king. Though their relationship was often strained, Anna ensured he received a royal education and was surrounded by formality, believing discipline was the best preparation for rule. She involved herself in decisions about his tutors and upbringing, often clashing with her husband over the boy's future. William would eventually become King William III, though his reign would echo many of the same challenges that divided his parents. Among Anna's other children, Prince Alexander held a special place in her heart. She valued his quiet intelligence and sensitivity, even as she tried to mold him in the Romanov tradition. The early deaths of Alexander and her youngest son, Henry, left emotional scars that never fully healed. Though Anna's daughter, Sophie, married into German royalty, it was her sons who remained closest to the Dutch throne. Anna viewed each child as a branch of her own imperial tree, raised not only to live with honor, but to carry the heavy burden of crown and lineage. To her, motherhood was not affection alone, it was governance by blood. The death of King William II in March of 1849 marked a turning point in Anna Pavlovna's life. Though their marriage had been distant and strained, the loss of her husband struck her with unexpected intensity. With his passing, she became a widow at the age of 49, and her role in public life shifted dramatically. No longer queen consort, Anna withdrew from court ceremonies and relocated to Soest Dijk Palace, which became her preferred place of residence. There, she lived in relative seclusion, surrounded by portraits, memories, and tokens of a life that no longer existed. She continued to host family gatherings and maintain her charitable interests, but her once commanding presence at court faded into the background. The transition of power to her son, now King William III, brought further strain. Anna disapproved of his personal choices, including his marriage to Sophie of Württemberg, which she had opposed from the beginning. Though she attended his inauguration, their relationship remained cold and formal, often marred by ideological differences and past grievances. In private, Anna kept alive the memory of her husband through mourning customs, religious devotion, and letters. Her widowhood was not marked by dramatic sorrow, but by a steady retreat into the personal and spiritual. With each passing year, she grew quieter, more rigid, and more deeply rooted in the traditions of her Russian upbringing. For Anna, the death of William was not only the end of a marriage, it was the final unraveling of her royal role in the Netherlands. What remained was memory, pride, and a life increasingly lived in the shadow of the past. In her final years, Anna Pavlovna lived as a widow of two worlds, the Netherlands, where she had served as queen, and Russia, where her soul still belonged. Residing primarily at Sostek Palace, she increasingly distanced herself from court politics and social obligations. What had once been a regal presence became a guarded solitude marked by ritual, reflection, and quiet stubbornness. Her relationship with her son, King William III, remained cool and often tense. Their differing views on monarchy, religion, and morality deepened the emotional divide. Anna disapproved of his lifestyle, his decisions, and the liberal direction his reign began to take. She maintained formal interactions with him, but the warmth expected between mother and son had long faded. Despite this tension, Anna remained a figure of symbolic importance. Diplomats and relatives continued to visit her, and she used her position to support Orthodox communities and Russian interests abroad. Within her private chapel, she observed religious rites daily, surrounded by icons, Russian priests, and reminders of her faith. Her identity as a Romanov never wavered. Even in a foreign land, she lived and worshipped as a Russian Grand Duchess. She also preserved traditions from the imperial court, formal dress, handwritten correspondence, and etiquette that mirrored St. Petersburg rather than The Hague. In an era of modernization, Anna stood firm in her past. As illness gradually overtook her, she neither softened nor sought public sympathy. Her faith and pride became her final companions, guiding her through the last chapter of a life built on duty, distance, and deep-rooted conviction. Anna Pavlovna passed away on the 1st of March in the year 1865, at the age of 65. Her death marked the end of a life that had bridged empires, borne crowns, and upheld tradition with iron dignity. Though not always beloved, she was respected for her discipline, her unwavering sense of duty, and her devotion to both homeland and adopted country. In the Netherlands, her legacy lives on in quiet but enduring ways. Numerous institutions bear her name, schools, hospitals, and foundations that originated from her charitable works. Her emphasis on structured care and education for the poor left a humanitarian imprint that outlasted her reign. The Anna Pavilion in Hilversum, in particular, stood as a lasting symbol of her compassion expressed through order. Perhaps the most poetic symbol of her memory is the Empress Tree, or Polonia tomentosa, named in her honor by German botanist Philipp Franz von Siebold. The tree, known for its rapid growth and grand purple blossoms, became a metaphor for Anna herself, proud, resilient, and deeply rooted in both Russian and Dutch soil. Though history often remembers more charismatic queens, Anna's strength lay in constancy. She did not seek applause, but she shaped institutions, upheld royal dignity, and passed on a lineage that would rule long after she was gone. Today, her portrait hangs in royal collections, and the Empress Tree blooms each spring, a quiet tribute to a woman who never let go of her heritage, even while building a life far from home. What do you think about Elisabeth of Valois? Was she a graceful queen, a diplomatic bridge between France and Spain, whose dignity and charm softened royal tensions and uplifted the Spanish crown during a delicate time? Or was she a sorrowful figure, a young woman caught in dynastic demands, burdened by expectations, and remembered more for her stillbirth and untimely death than her own voice? And what about Anna Pavlovna of Russia? Was Anna a resolute queen, a Romanov by heart who upheld charity, court ritual and royal decorum across decades in a land not her own? Or was she a lonely sovereign distant from her family, rigid in her traditions, and remembered more for her retreat into seclusion than for the soul beneath the crown? Were these two women symbols of quiet resilience, holding empires together with grace and silence? Or were they prisoners of royal legacy, their sacrifices hidden behind protocol and portraits? We would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And if these stories touched you, please like, share, and subscribe for more untold legacies and hidden voices from history. Thank you so much for watching.